What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Monji TV. On today's episode, we got the M2 race car on the lift. As you can see, the gas is draining from where it shouldn't be draining, and that's because we punctured a hole in the gas tank. Why did we do this? We did this because the car's always had an issue with the fuel level sensor or the fuel level gauge not being accurate, and it throws this fuel consumption code. And so today, we're gonna fix it. How are we gonna fix it? Well, we're gonna replace the tank. We got a new fuel tank showing up for the car. Currently, we've stripped the exhaust out of it, some of the heat shields. We've got the e-brake cables undone. You can see here, the e-brake pads exposed. Everything is coming out basically in the way of the gas tank. The main things are going to be the drive shaft, the parking brake cables, the exhaust, the heat shields, and that's about it. We punctured a hole in it because it's full of gas and I was supposed to run it out, but it's also like really sketchy running all the gas out of the car because you don't know when you're out. So I've got to like just gauge based on when I filled up and how many miles I think I've driven, which is really annoying. So Morgan's taking the drive shaft out of the car currently. We're gonna get all of what we can into this 5 gallon. We're gonna hold the hole. I'm gonna throw the gas in the E92 and then we're gonna get whatever's left in the tank. If it's more than 5 gallons, I'm thinking it's probably gonna be more than 5 gallons. So let's go ahead, watch Morgan pull this drive shaft down. He pulled the 3 front bolts. There's a big jam nut here in the back and some 13 millimeters to hold the center support bearing there in the center. I gotta watch this gas here so we don't spill. Oh, it's getting messy. Jeez, there's no stopping that really. All right guys, I had to help Morgan real quick with the drive shaft. Drive shaft is out. Gas is still draining. We're probably gonna poke another hole in this thing just to make sure the whole thing's drained. We really probably don't need to. It's probably light enough now that we've gotten like 5 gallons out of it, but just to be sure, we're gonna poke a hole in this side as well. Make sure it's drained completely. And then we'll show you from the inside. There's not much really from the inside. All you gotta do, once all this stuff is out of the way, there's one bracket here, a few little vacuum connections to your charcoal canister valve box here. You can either leave that in the car by removing these bolts down here, or take it down with the gas tank, which is the way that I think we're gonna do it. So we'll show you that here in a bit, but yeah, enough talking about it. Let's just get it done. I'm so excited to actually have a working gas gauge. It sounds so like simple, but yeah, it's one of those things that's always plagued the car. And I originally thought it was the gas tank. I think we mentioned this in another episode, or the fuel pump, because the fuel level sensor normally when it goes bad is, you know, on the fuel pump, but there is a secondary one located inside the tank. And so due to that, it's non-serviceable, and that ended up being the cause, you know, mistakenly, without even really diagnosing it. I just threw a fuel pump in the car, just being kind of lazy, but yeah, it is what it is. We're also gonna be working on some M2 CSR engine mount inserts. So we're gonna be stiffening up the engine and transmission drivetrain combination, utilizing these factory BMW M2 CSR M Performance Racing Division billet aluminum inserts. Very nice. The part numbers are gonna read 22, 11, 8, 431, 709 for this smaller guy. Actually, don't even remember which side is which. I'm gonna have to look that up here in a second. And the other part number is 22, 11, 8, 416, 823. So we're gonna go ahead and install that. They're quite different looking, so they aren't interchangeable. One side doesn't go on the other. So something to note here. There's an arrow for whatever reason on this guy. They want it facing forward. What's funny is the part number is actually stamped on there. Super cool. But yeah, by the looks of it, it must just be the angle here. And same with this. It doesn't have an arrow though. Anyways, we're gonna be going ahead and installing those. We're probably gonna have to drop the subframe to do this just slightly. We're gonna try and just lift the motor and see if we can slip them in there. I just don't know that it's gonna be possible. So we'll keep you guys tuned in on how we do that. But right now we've got obviously all the underbelly pans out. We're working on the top nut here for the bracket to the upper mount of the motor mount. And we're gonna go ahead and see if we can just hoist the motor up either with a pull stand or the engine support bar or beam that's over there on the wall. So we'll keep you guys tuned in on what we do and how we get it in the car. All right guys, I have the motor mounts out of the car. This is the driver's side here and the passenger side here, the turbo side. So normally this thing's got a little heat shield on it. It does say to remove this, as well as there's a little half moon here on this one that goes here. You will have to remove that so that these will sit flush all the way down. What's weird is this one does seem like it has a provision for the heat shield, but it will not clear due to this extra meat in this section. So I was thinking about trimming this down, which we may do, but nonetheless, bolts kind of face away from the car. So in the car like this is how they go. The thick side on the driver's side towards the inside, and on the passenger side, the arrow points towards the front of the car, but it's also on the inside. So we'll show you these here in a second, installed on the car. They're quite easy to install. It's a little hard to do one-handed, but they just slip over the motor mount. A little bit of like tapping will get them down. But yeah, nonetheless, this is how they look. They're pretty sweet. And we're gonna go ahead and throw them in the car and give you a look of how they are in the car. Should really improve the feel of the car. So super excited to see how that feels. Let's get to it. All right guys, so here's a final look of them installed. See the thick side to the inside on the driver, the arrow on the inside on the passenger, both bolts facing out. We're gonna take one of these over to the car. The subframe, as you can see, is already dropped down. And this guy's gonna just slide right up through there. Land, and then that's gonna go up to there. You can see how that's gonna support the motor mount there and make it more of like a solid mount. Let's go ahead and get the other side in as well. All right guys, we have the old tank here. We've removed our fuel pump assembly and swapped it over to our new tank. Finally just showing up. There is one connector and a little hose inside of there, which I can show you on this other tank, which you do have to slip into the fuel pump. There's this little guy here, and there's a little button you gotta press to release it, and one connector you got to plug in. So make sure to do that. Lock your little lock ring on. We're gonna go ahead, throw this in the car. Super simple, kind of just slides over the top of the e-brakes here, and we'll connect to our fuel line here and our vacuum or our canister line here, evap line there. So let's go ahead, get this thing in. Enough talking about it. Tired of waiting for the fuel tank, so let's go. So I ended up cutting a hole in the gas tank so I could figure out what was wrong with it. Unfortunately, had it been serviceable, like this little cap here been removable, I actually would have been able to fix it. But what happened is this level sensor that's here, straight just popped out and was laying in the bottom of the tank here. And so that's why our fuel level gauge never worked right. So anyways, this tank is obviously trash now. We're gonna go ahead and throw it away. We've got the new tank in the car with the line connected here and the canister box over there and all the vacuum lines or evap lines connected for that. We're gonna go ahead and snug this down, get the drive shaft back in it, get the e-brake cables back connected to our parking brakes, and get this car back on the road, exhaust system back in and whatnot. So let's go ahead and do it. All right guys, the gas tank is in. We've got our little charcoal canister installed. There is a little heat shield that covers the filler neck pipe and this evap hose here that you have to install. It's a little tricky. There's a little clip that also holds the line back up in here, and it just mounts on these 3 studs to the chassis here. We've torqued the gas tank to about 20 foot-pounds. The drive shaft is ready to go in. There is a center guy here we've also torqued to 20. We did install a new clip, even though the old one wasn't broken, just for preventative maintenance to make sure we don't have an issue later down the road. E-brakes have been installed and torqued. We're about to install the drive shaft. The front bolts here are 56 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. This back big jam nut, I believe, is 80 foot-pounds, and the center support here in the middle is 13 or 18 foot-pounds, I believe. So we'll be going ahead, getting the drive shaft back in wherever it is, and then we will put the heat shields in and the exhaust in, and we're basically done. And we'll take this thing on a test drive and hopefully have a working gas tank, finally. Super excited about that, so let's keep going. All right, guys, the drive shaft has been torqued to 120 Newton meters here at the back at the diff. The center support bolts have been torqued to 18 foot-pounds. These front bolts have been torqued to 55 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. Everything's been marked, everything's good to go. So we're gonna go ahead and put the heat shields in as we're ready for all the heat shields and then the exhaust. So enough talking about it. let's get some gas in the car and see how she runs and see if our gas gauge finally works. I'm super excited. All right guys, all the heat shields are in with the bolts. We just got to snug everything down. Once that's all snug, we're gonna go ahead and put these little corner bracket pieces that are here on the ground in, and then we'll torque everything and get the exhaust in. So we're almost there. All right guys, the front subframe has been torqued to 108 Newton meters or 80 foot-pounds. The motor mounts have been put in. The lower bolts have been torqued to 18 foot-pounds and the upper nut to 56 Newton meters. Those motor mount inserts are looking sick. I'm excited to see how they feel. The plastic trim pieces have kind of gone back in. We did put the end links back on. Everything needs to basically be checked by hand. The front center belly pan installed and the front oil cooler guard installed, and the transmission cover once the exhaust goes in, which obviously you guys saw we were working on the gas tank. But yeah, and then we'll throw some like zip ties on this hose again because we did have to release those due to dropping the subframe. It was too tight in this area, little stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and button this all up and get this thing back on the road. I'm super excited to see how these motor mounts feel. All right guys, so now that the gas tank's back in the car, we're gonna go ahead and clip our fuel line on. You wanna make sure this white clip is pulled backwards. It's literally just gonna push down, push this white tab in, and make sure the line doesn't pop off, and that's it. And then we're gonna connect our electrical cable here, which is now connected down. Double check that it's seated. We're just gonna go ahead and put our cap back on, take our nuts, put these in here and start this bad boy up and see if we got a working fuel gauge. Super excited. We'll go ahead and zap this up. We did just fill the car with 5 gallons of fuel, so I went and got some fresh fuel from the gas station and pumped it full of fuel, so we're ready to start it. All right guys, we're gonna go ahead, reinstall the negative terminal here on the battery, which is gonna put power back to the car. And let's go see if this thing's got a working gas gauge now. Seems so trivial to be excited about, but when you don't have a working gas gauge, it's actually quite important to you. Wow, look at that. We put about 5 gallons in. We got just less than a half a tank. That makes sense. Super cool, guys. We should be good now. That's awesome. So we'll go ahead and get this thing off the lift. We'll take it to the gas station, pump it full, and just make sure everything's working. And I am happy. Woo! All right, well, we're gonna take it for a quick test drive. I'm going to go top her off with some gas and make sure the gas gauge is working. Everything is good under here. We'll go ahead and shut this. Go ahead and back her out. All the wheels have been torqued. Sweet. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to the store and put some gas in her. All right, guys, just topped off the fuel tank, and now we got a fuel gas tank. So one issue solved. I don't know what it is about this stupid car, but it's like every time I fix one issue, something else arises. I don't know if you remember in the last video, but we replaced some O2 sensors just recently, and the 2 secondary O2 sensors are already going bad. It's been like 3 months maybe. So we need to get O2 sensors. And another funny thing is we also replaced the Valvetronic actuator when we were doing the crank hub, which is also like, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months old. Have a code for that now. So I'm gonna try and do some adaptations, see if doing a relearn on the position stops of the Valvetronic actuator fixed that. But yeah, for right now, gas gauge works, still got a check engine light. Sick. See you guys in the next one. Hopefully you like this type of content. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you like this video, be sure to check out the next one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It helps a lot. Thanks, and see you in the next one.